So I'm joined by Devon Watson, and Devon, your hat today is fare free because you do the coalition and all that sort of thing. Buses, free.
Yeah.
You want it.
So we're part of the Fare Free campaign. We've got three main objectives. One, the most simple, the one that everyone knows, is we want free public transport, which on the Isle of Man means free busing. Secondly, we want a more efficient busing system. So we want to reverse the sort of like disastrous cuts that we've seen in Derby and Andreas that have seen entire like swathes of the north completely disconnected from busing services. People are up in arms about that, and there's actually been no outcry from MHKs.
Well, they have had the local MHKs have got onto it, I think, in the last week or so.
After months of relentless pressure, and they put no proposals at the time to oppose the cuts or to oppose the Connect Villages scheme, which a lot of people are deeply, deeply unhappy with. So it's great that they're finally coming to the table now.
Okay, the logic is that you dial a bus, right?
Yeah.
And you think a more regular system is better, but isn't that worse than the environment? I mean, just buses running up and down empty, or are they not?
I mean, buses running up and down empty is a massive, massive problem, which is why, ideally, if you've got free public transportation, people have a much greater incentive to jump on the bus. But also, you don't need to have a massive bus there. They've ordered all of these minibuses, and you can just have those running at a regular rate. You can have more structured time. They could even actually just consult people actually use the bus services beforehand, before they do this. So dial a ride is something that could be potentially very useful all over the island for people who are infirm, particularly elderly, but like this was rolled out in a particularly poor fashion. So
communication wasn't.
Yeah, you should at least communicate with the people who are using the service.
It just seemed to come in, didn't it, almost?
Yeah, it's atrocious. And our third main objective, apart from free buses and a more efficient system, is we want electric vehicles and green transportation. So when the buses do trundle around, when they replace cars, at least it's a greener form of transportation. So China has 426,000 electric buses, about 90% of the global total. They show that it's very, very possible. It's very cheap, it's very low in maintenance because they don't have as many working parts. And these are things that could easily be used here. Manchester has electric buses.
Yeah, I saw one in Edinburgh last week. But is the technology really here for the? It's still developing, isn't it? The
I mean, the electric buses are already, in fact. I mean, unless the Isle of Man has different laws of physics to the UK. I know we're an island, we're separate, right? But I think the technology should also be applicable here on the island.
Well, they've just bought a lot of buses over the years, and I think there'll be that maybe down the road. But let's talk about making the fare free.
Yeah.
I mean, this comes up from time to time, and we'll be having people standing in as MHKs, no doubt that'll be one of the things.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I went on the bus the other day, it was a great service, it wasn't too expensive. You get Wi-Fi, drops you almost everywhere you want. But they need to make some money, don't they, at the end of the day? Otherwise, there's going to be one heck of a bill that someone's going to have to pick up. Yeah,
so we've actually got the numbers pretty much sorted out on our end. About fares only cover about a quarter of the operating costs. The rest come from the government itself. And the total amount of money that the government brings in from fares is £4.5 million a year. So £4.5 million a year equates to 0.3% of the total national budget. It's not massive amounts, but it's a massive amount out of people's pockets. So if you're a minimum wage worker and you work in Ramsey and you live in Douglas, £3.50 there, £3.50 back. If you're on minimum wage, that's already an hour of your income gone, which if you're working a 6-hour shift or an 8-hour shift is a giant total of your total monthly wage.
Okay, so could it be means tested then, or do you want out and out free?
I think universal systems are good. I mean, the rest of the most efficient, the best government services that people appreciate, such as police service, the fire service, parks, the NHS or national insurance here on the island, these are all things that are not means tested. Universal programs generally work better because the government has to spend loads and loads of money on means testing first of all, and the accounting in this. So we hope to save a lot of costs because the ticketing systems are quite expensive, the accounting systems are quite expensive, monitoring and policing the bus drivers in a very sort of like micromanagery fashion in order to make sure that the fares are being collected in the first place. These are incredibly expensive, and you can eliminate a lot of those costs with fare free. So there are costs, but there are also savings.
But of course, it's now all touch technology. I mean, you don't need cash or anything. If you just get on a bus, it's just swiped off your credit card, isn't it?
I mean,
technology-wise,
I mean, sometimes
if it works.
Yeah, but the fact is, like, there's a lot of people who aren't going to be using contactless technology, and a vast majority of people who do happen to use the bus services are sometimes quite a bit older. There comes a point where you can't drive anymore, and these aren't always people who always use contactless technology. or if you just don't have your card and you have a bit of cash, I mean, as long as there's always at least a couple pounds trickling through the system, they have to maintain these very expensive cash-based systems. And it does cost the bus service quite a bit.
Well, pensions go free, and they used to go free, I think, on the MER, but that got reversed. I mean, do you want to extend that free service to MER? I mean, how far do you want to go on this?
I mean, I think if you want to jump on a bus, you shouldn't pay. Like, the bus is going that way anyway. Might as well give you a lift, right?
Tram,
I mean, I don't think that I would prefer buses for now. So we're looking at a public transport system. So when you look at the trains, if you look at the electric tram, if you look at the horse trams, for example, these aren't things that you use to commute. Rather, these are things of heritage significance. Maybe you could look at that long term down the road if they were made commutable services.
The trams are electric.
Yeah, the trams are electric, which is great. Yeah, fantastic. If we could extend that, make that a bit quicker, who knows?
Where are you going with this? I mean, you're coming up with these, you're doing the media rounds, but is this all going towards some sort of campaigning for the elections for you and your group?
Perhaps, but our primary focus is fighting climate change. So often when politicians propose that we fight climate change, they propose it in ways that hurt working class people the most, such as bans on single-use plastics, or tax on fast fashion, or heavy fuel taxes that affect people who have to commute the furthest, which are typically working class people. So we think that the action on climate change should be something that makes the lives of working class people a lot better. So every pound that the government covers a fare for you is money that people can end up spending on childcare. You can start spending on groceries. You can start putting into your mortgage or put into your rent. And we would like to maybe campaign in the next elections, particularly if politicians remain as unhelpful as we found them to be so far.
How's it going with the DOI? And because I mean that's what it comes under. I mean, I know Mr. Harm was slightly busy with the promenade thing, but are you in communication with other politicians?
I mean, we've been in communication. They said they'll get back to us in 2020.
Sorry, say again. 2020.
They said they'll get
back to you in 2020.
They said they'll get back to us in 2020 when the climate change consultation and the bills come out and stuff.
Oh,
but
I see. Okay.
I realised that destroying the problem takes a lot of someone's time budget.
Ow.
But yeah, hopefully they get back to us at some point. But it doesn't matter. We're patient. So if these politicians don't work with us, we'll look to replace them with people who will. I mean,
it does sound like fighting talk, doesn't it? Electioneering talk.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, if we're talking about climate change, we're talking about perhaps the destruction of the planet or a massive change to our way of life. So one or two politicians looking to advance their careers shouldn't be a barrier on giving better goods and services to working and middle class people.
Would you like to see that fare free for everyone? I'm talking about people come over on holidays, or should it just be for the Isle of Man people, taxpayers, or people who are living here?
Yeah, so Wales has introduced free bus travel on weekends to boost tourism, and there's some very encouraging numbers on that end. So I think that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. People are like, oh, let's go to the Isle of Man. At least we can get around cheaply. That's one cost that's automatically covered. Because every pound that they don't spend on the bus then is money that they end up spending in shops, that they spend in a pub, that they spend circulating throughout the economy.
And some countries have made a free bus service, haven't they? I mean, there's one or two out there, isn't there, that's done it already?
Yeah, so 2 countries in Europe. So one is Luxembourg and one is Tallinn in Estonia. If we look at Estonia's case, there's some very encouraging numbers. So it decreases car usership by 10% and increases bus ridership by 10%. So there are 3 main effects from this. Firstly, it means that people have more incomes. Cars are quite expensive to run from day to day. And the people who would otherwise have to make that choice on the margins end up having a bit of an extra income where it's most meaningful. Secondly, there's far more parking. If there's fewer cars around, Douglas can't keep accommodating parking forever. So, and we can't destroy or historic buildings in order to do this. And thirdly is less congestion in traffic. Anyone who commutes knows that traffic is getting worse and worse and worse, and we can't widen the roads and infringe on historic buildings. Okay. So the only option is to try and get people out of the cars some way. And allowing for any more elections, do you think there's any possibility that you're going to be listened to? We can hope so, but I think that even if they won't listen to us, they can listen to the hundreds of environmental activists who will be able to canvass, who will be able to knock on doors, who will be able to put this message forward. Because everyone who you speak to about this campaign eventually they realize that maybe free public transportation should be viewed as a national service, as an economic freedom, as a guaranteed sort of economic right that you have. Because in the modern economy, you can't get around without this. In the same way that you can't get around without schooling, you can't get around without protection from fire or protection from criminals. So guaranteeing people like basic economic freedoms is an idea that will gain traction over time.